So we are live on YouTube for the second edition of Speck&Tech, the new series, which is called Stay Home. This is the second edition. There's myself speaking, Francesco. Then we have Giulio, we have Michele, we have Fabrizio, and a bunch of other people in the room that are waiting for our speaker of the night, Matteo Gavagnin. For the people that do not know us, we are Speck&Tech. We are a tech community based in Trento. We have been holding events for almost 4 years at the moment. Due to COVID, of course, we stopped and we moved online. This was last year when we were still at Impact Hub Trentino. After that, we moved to Le Gallerie. Nothing really changed. We kept having two great talks per night on around the same topic. And after that, now we're only doing one because we thought that it's better to just have a lighter version of Speck&Tech being purely online. And actually, this is the big part that is missing. No spec this time, no spec at all. But we hope that you're playing with bring your own beers regulations and drinking your beverage or eating your spec at your home safely. Together with our tech events, we also organized a number of other things like the Speck&Tech Retreat. This was our gathering in the mountains. Stay tuned. This won't happen probably in 2020, but maybe next year in 2021. So far, so good. Over 40 events with more than 5,000 participants overall. And then we are back after a while. This is second edition, as I said before. The first one, we had John Graham Cumming, the CTO of Cloudflare. This time, we have Matteo Gavagnin, the CTO of Dimension, actually still another CTO. And then I hand it over to Giulio for a brief introduction.
Yes. Well, so next steps. If you want to stay updated to Speck&Tech events, make sure to visit our website. We have all previous edition and everything. It's www.speckand.tech. You can find all the slides, previous video, and so on. So right now we moved fully on YouTube. Actually, some of the participants are here with us on Google Meet, but well, video is available even later if you want to follow us. So make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications, which is a thing they say in this place apparently. Other than that, we mostly have our Telegram channel, which you should totally subscribe to, which is where we put all the information about our events. Then, well, you can support Speck&Tech as well. We will come back in a physical way, I hope very soon, considering the numbers of the virus, which apparently are going milder. You can use S.T.A.Y. If you don't know what it is, you can subscribe to S.T.A.Y. with our promo code. They basically give you money for free because they are super venture backed, and you can donate those money to Speck&Tech. Thank you if you want to.
Which is clever.
Yeah. Moreover, we do have T-shirts which will be available again when we'll be in a physical location. But if you really, really, really want a T-shirt, just write on our, I guess, Facebook page or something. We will somehow arrive to your location if you are nearby Trento. Otherwise,
and actually, it's a super big surprise. But we are working on the fourth edition of this of the T-shirt, so you never know. Stay tuned.
Another small thing, we have a discount for the CSS day, which will be had the 19th of June, online, obviously. If you're interested, just enter our coupon. You can jump back to this part of the video later if you don't remember the exact name of the coupon. Thanks CSS day, and they do this like every year, usually in real life, obviously. It's a solid event if you are interested in front-end development, CSS. You're like, this is weird intersection between designer and developer. That's the place you want to be. All right. Yeah, as always, if you want to ask questions to Matteo and you are in Google Meet, please don't do it during the talk. He will go as as far as he can through all the Immuni thing. But if you have more questions, we will have some at the end. We will use Slido. Most of you already know what it is. It's a website, slide.io/stay home. Just go there, write your question. There is like an upvote system where the most interesting questions are going up and the less interesting question are going to later or maybe never. I'm sorry, we have
Or to
limited time.
disappear.
Anyhow, Matteo is super easy to find usually on Twitter, and he is also friendly. So if you are really super curious, you can ask him even later. Right. So I believe we said everything. So let's leave the stage to Matteo Gavagnin, which is one of the most frequent speakers in Speck&Tech. So thanks again for being with us tonight, and thanks to everyone who tuned in. We are right now 53 people, which is plain crazy to me. And thank you very much for joining our events, even in this digital world, which is where, let's say, how it is. Most of us spend their time anyway. So, all right. So Speck&Tech stay at home number 2. Quick change of slides. Matteo, you can start presenting, and I am muting myself. Thank you very much.
Enjoy it.
Let me start the presentation. Give me a smile, Francesco, if you can see, please. Okay. So thank you for joining me during this evening. I'm going to tell not everything about Immuni, but everything I lived through the last months as a journey that ended with the publication of Immuni applications on the app and Play stores, and hopefully landed on your phones already. You can find me on Twitter at Matteo, and if you are interested, you can actually grab the slides. I'm showing it to you right now at this link. You can find some materials that I'm going to talk briefly, but there are clickable links that you can explore yourself. I'm going to talk about a journey that I lived staying in my home office, like probably most of you during this time. So you won't find beautiful landscapes or anything exotic, but I decided to use as slides what I actually experienced during these months. So you'll find some tweets from other people and even humbly from myself, and other materials like website and so on. So if you want to open the slides, you can watch and explore them live, and maybe they'll be helpful to let you find some questions that I'll be happy to answer later. I have to do another premise, because those are strange times. In normal times, probably I'll be in California right now, because maybe WWDC Apple's annual events would occur on Monday in early June, so I could be there. Or maybe with many of you, we could be at our offices in Trento here watching the same event. And excuse me for the brief interruption, but what I am actually experiencing right now is people and police brutally moving against people in America and even in other parts of the world. So I couldn't resist and have to say that I support the Black Lives Matter movement, and that's it. In mid-February, the lockdown word that we learned to understand and to talk about very many times during those months, actually for me was just the name of a virtual private network application that I installed on my phone. obviously, in few days, things changed, and we started having data and a beautiful representation of people that actually came ill and started dying in Italy, one of the first countries that had very spread pandemic and COVID-19 virus. So events started to be cancelled and moved online. We in Dimension have been very, very happy to receive just in time our new computers. And actually, people like you and me probably started to work from home. Initially, at least happily, because with this infamous pie chart, people were willing at least to try to work remotely at least one time in their lifetime. Then, obviously, venues started closing, and people decided that they could try to help in some ways. For example, this astrophysicist maybe wasn't the brightest guy around, but even myself started wondering what they can do. Is there something that we can do to tackle maybe digitally or with our contribution besides staying home to contribute to fight the pandemic? And as I said, people from all around the world were joining and mourning for Italy, even showing their strength and supporting us from at least, for example, Niagara Falls with the tricolore showed. In few days, obviously, lockdown meant something else. We were stuck at home, and we were trying to don't move, actually, to limit our possibility to be contagious and being contagious by other people. Data starting being published by Google, Apple, aggregated data based on how less we moved regarding previous weeks and previous months. So we had beautiful graph and charts with information, aggregated information about our location. I want to stress this because those informations are based on GPS location using global positioning system on our phones. And actually, this information is something that is readily available to, and I want to start this small video. I hope you can see, or otherwise use the slides. Our location is something that we already gave to many different companies. The cellular network operators and carriers, social networks, advertisement company, and so on. For example, in this animation, you can see how with a software that actually is pretty standard, it's not something that obscure, you have to pay, but it's really available. People can be pinpointed, and for example, those people highlighted right now are the ones gathered in Florida for the spring break. And following the animation, you can find out how and where each single one of them moved in the following hours and days all around United States of America. This is just an example. This kind of tools are available globally. So our location is something that we already gave away a long time ago to many different companies. I assume that you are actually a little bit skilled about technology, so I'm gonna go and touch briefly some of the arguments. But if you have any question, please take your chance and ask them. So I'll be happy to answer them later, because even the government started questioning how can we, Italy, we, the government, can tackle the issue of COVID-19 pandemic leveraging technology. So in mid-March, they issued a fast call, 3 days, and people like you and me, companies, or research institute can actually submit existing solutions or possible solutions to tackle the problem. And a few days later, the task force with 74 members has been formed and created. And they had the opportunity and the task to analyze the more than 300 proposals that has been submitted and select the ones that were most suited to tackle the issue. We didn't know much more officially for many days, but immediately rumors stated that a single application has been selected called Immuni from Bending Spoons. Other leaks or articles have been stating that the task force actually selected two applications, Immuni and COVID App, from another Italian team created for to tackle the specific task. And actually, those applications were using another kind of information, proximity information. How a proximity proximity between two different person or more than two different persons can be used to tackle pandemic. Well, one of the first website online since April the 1st was this one, Pan-European Privacy Preserving Proximity Tracing Consortium. Well, Bending Spoons was part, we knew that was part of this consortium. And they, in the website, they described, without going deeply on details, how you can actually leverage Bluetooth on our cell phones to emit and receive small chunks of informations, anonymous informations derived from cryptographic sounding keys that, when collected, can help you create and trace who you met, or maybe which devices you met. And if one of them later tested positive for COVID-19, you could be actually alerted and eventually be submitted to a tampon or be treated and so on. We didn't know much more at the time because there wasn't a specific implementation of this pan-European privacy-preserving proximity tracing algorithm or specification. It seems to be a marketing website. But I'm just conflating few information and few infographics, but this was the key the key algorithm, the key information that you have to know. Telephones exchanging keys or maybe ephemeral IDs between each other with Bluetooth, and if someone tested positive, the key originating the ephemeral IDs will be uploaded to a central server, to a database. Then that same key would be spread to the other devices, compared on device if a match would be found, and in that case, the device itself would alert the other person. Few days later, in mid-April, and again, I'm not following a strict timeline in this moment, but for the sake of the discussion, I'm using this information right now. A Robert protocol, actually a specific implementation, or at least a paper describing the implementation of the Pan-European Privacy-Preserving Proximity Tracing Consortium came out, has been published. And reading it, we can understand, as the good Michele Pittoni said, there is a central authority that actually created those cryptographic keys and can be used to, if not honest, can be used to actually create and de-anonymize the informations. So the authority, if not honest, the government, if democratic, or maybe a less democratic government, could actually detect different kind of information, not where we've been. And we previously understood that our location is something that it's pretty common to find online. There are many companies that already know this information about us, but who we met and who and for how many times and so on is not an information that actually people and government has, at least in Italy. Maybe in China they have it, but in Italy this is not an information readily available. So we have to keep in mind that this is not something that we should give away easily. Obviously, it's a privacy issue. I'm going to skip this, but you can look forward and make an opinion, your opinion about the organization. Another implementation of the same, initially the same consortium was the DP3T protocol. It has the same wording, privacy preserving proximity tracing protocol, but there's a single word before it, decentralized. What that means? Well, there isn't in this implementation a central authority that creates and signs all the keys used by the devices. So are the devices themselves that can create, that can and should create the cryptographic keys, and from them all the ephemeral identifiers that are exchanged between the devices and are then derived. This way, the central authority doesn't exist, and the government or any attacker or maybe private companies developing the application you choose cannot create and recreate who we met, and our privacy is actually potentially way more protected. Obviously, there has been some analysis, security analysis. There has been many details has been found out and written down. The protocol is not invulnerable, as you probably know, but both protocols can be attacked. So you have to know it's nothing is perfect, okay? But one of the key information that this implementation, the decentralized information implementation, has is that it published sample software development kits and sample applications for both iOS and Android. So in mid-April, I downloaded it, installed it, tested it, and actually find out how it would work. Now, a second catch arrives, because those applications, and in particular the operating systems underpinning those applications, are not allowing third-party applications. So, for example, the DP3T implementations are not allowed to emit and receive Bluetooth signals while the application is not the foremost in foreground, neither when the device are locked and secured. So this represents a bigger issue, in my opinion. The application couldn't actually work reliably on our devices. There has been some experiments in Singapore, for example, on the previous month. The people were supposed to go and wander around with the device unlocked and the application still running in the foreground, for it to be able to actually do a contact tracing. And this behavior exposes the user to other kind of issues. For example, that this can be understood by anybody. If someone steals your phone and that's unlocked, well, every single information stored on that phone is not encrypted anymore. All your contacts, all your emails, or your every single document that you have on the phone could be in the hands of the thief. In a few days, we understood that the DP3T project, however, wasn't really satisfied with the Robert protocol that the pan-European privacy-preserving proximity tracing consortium that was they were part of it. There has been a fight in some way, and they split. So now we have a clear centralized with a central authority implementation and a clear decentralized implementation with sample code. And still the background Bluetooth not working, the Bluetooth not working while the applications are in background. I tried also to ask Stefano Quintarelli, that's one of the proposers or managers, I don't know, of the COVID application, the second one selected by the task force, on how they managed to work in background. And he pointed me to their open source implementation. I had the opportunity to look what which workaround they were using, and they were actually giving themselves in the hands of the power management system of the iOS operating system in this case, but on Android 8 and newer, the issue was basically the same. So I started forming the opinion, me and many others, that Immuni, whichever implementation they submitted to the fast call, and COVID App, the other winner, didn't have a properly working solution in background. Even if it was centralized, it wouldn't work. Fortunately, on April the 10th, Apple and Google published a document. So this is after the fast call, after the application has been submitted and selected. Apple and Google published a new specification, a joint specification that actually solved the background, the application in background emission issue. They did a lot more because they actually, their implementation was basically the very same implementation of the DP3T protocol, so the decentralized one. And people, even without source code, started developing applications to understand how those applications can actually work, based on user experience and based on the specification provided by Apple and Google. Also, some other things started to appear. Probably new Huawei phones weren't going to support the application because they don't have Google Play services, the most recent ones. And Google said that they were going to support Android 6 and newer with an updated version of Google Play services. A few days later, the first beta version of iOS and the Android specification were released, and we knew another thing. Apple required each application to be blessed in a way by Apple itself. So only specific application developed in conjunction or by the government of each single country can actually use this kind of software, this kind of framework from Apple called Contact Tracing API, then called renamed Exposure Notification APIs. And another thing that we later knew is that Apple itself forbid those kind of application using this contact tracing API to, at the same time, ask permissions to use location API. So states and their decision have to choose: do we want to use location, GPS location, coordinate on Earth coordinate to actually try to limit the spread of the virus, or should we leverage Bluetooth? Not both together. Obviously, if they choose to adopt Apple's and Google APIs. There are obviously even other options. So just to recap, there are some acronyms, or letters that are mostly the same, but the DP3T protocol is the decentralized one that it appears right now to be optimal for privacy. We still don't know, obviously, if it will help limit the spread of the virus. Then there is the PPPT consortium that initially appeared to be some marketing BS, and there wasn't a public implementation. Then obviously they published the robber specification, and that's the centralized protocol. And to conclude, contact tracing framework, then renamed exposure notification APIs, are mostly the DP3T, are mostly following the DP3T implementation, so a decentralized one. European Union issued on April 15 a document, a 20 pages document to inform and to try to direct the states, the members, to how to develop an application or many applications to fight against COVID-19. You can have a look. The document is very well written. It's clear, and it has some key information. For example, I assume I read it with the details, and I think that the slides are a little bit small, but they said that proximity technology should be able to work even when the device is locked and even when the application is in background. So a clear directive from the European Union. And also, to preserve privacy, they ask to use a decentralized protocol. The Apple and Google published the document only 5 days earlier, so there isn't a clear indication to follow and to adopt Apple's and Google frameworks. They say, actually, we need more time, more days to understand if these new APIs are a good fit or not. Then the day after, we knew from the government that actually Immuni was chosen, and we have finally an official statement from the government, but we didn't know much more. We knew that Bending Spoons was the winner, if we can say that they won a free commission, and we knew that Bending Spoons was part of the PPPPT consortium. We didn't know how Immuni worked, which was the technology underpinning it, and if privacy issues has been considered. So people like Marco Cappato started to demand and to answer that the source code of the Immuni application needed to be make open source. And many other people started to posing question how it will work. How do you design the application to actually fit rightly with existing regulations from Italy and from European Union? Please give us some informations, some more informations. At the same time, the team developing the France application started having issues, and maybe you can tell me, but obviously they weren't able to use and to reliably run the applications in background on iOS and on Android phones. They even asked Apple to relax the iPhone operating system security to let application actually emit and receive signals while in background. Apple never allowed this kind of technology to work since the first iPhone, because application can actually perform contact tracing if this would be allowed, but contact tracing, if not regulated, can be used again to find out who you met, when, where, and so on. So Apple never allowed that. They tried to even go to the press, but we didn't have any official response. In fact, Apple and Google already released a solution that France was free to adopt. But France, and that's the motivation, decided that they wanted a centralized algorithm. So they wanted their health authorities to be able to create a social graph of the population that could be exposed or not to the COVID-19 virus. Apple and Google frameworks weren't designed with this in mind. They wanted to work preventing a central authority to even exist, because obviously Apple and Google needs to create their frameworks to be used all around the world. And maybe Italy and France are democracies right now, and if the same algorithm, the same software from Apple and Google is used, I don't know, in Turkey, in China, it can be used and leveraged to track and find out more about people by not so sounding democracy governments. We did get, a few days later, another, I missed a slide. People obviously started, and the research institute starting to analyze the situation. Is this a viable solution to the pandemic? Can we solve the issue with an app? And there are plenty of papers and documentations actually posing many questions with little answers, because this is uncharted territory. We did get, a few days later, a clarification from the government, and then we knew that the Immune application actually was going to be released as open source software. That's good, very good. And also that they were considering different approaches for the algorithm underpinning it. They cited the Apple and Google frameworks, the DP3T implementation, and the PPPT consortium. So everything was on the table. The centralized solution, open source, without sample code, the decentralized implementation, and the other decentralized implementation from Apple and Google. Obviously, people much with many more competence than me started wondering which one will be selected. And Matteo GP Flora, that actually was one of the previous speaker of Speck&Tech, asked the Professor Stefano Zanero to what they thought, and you can have a look and maybe laugh even watching this video. They have a really interesting example of why a government shouldn't have this kind of information, our social graph. And then on the same day, a letter signed by many professors and researchers asked the government to actually release the application as open source and to adopt a decentralized approach. Few days later, 2 days later, we got news that the Immuni application changed. We didn't know if it really changed or if it was a process that wasn't clear from the beginning. But in that moment, we knew that they decided to adopt a decentralized approach using Apple's and Google frameworks released in the meantime. Obviously, centralized or decentralized approach, which one is the best? Which one is the most effective to fight the COVID pandemic? We still don't know. Few papers have been published again to try to pinpoint strong and less sounding implementations and risks on both of them. You can have a look, and if you are interested, there's plenty to read. If that sounds complicated to you, well, you're not alone, because our foreign affairs minister said in an interview that the Immuni application was going to be able to alert you even before coming in contact with a positive person. So some kind of prescient application. That's not the case. You would be notified with any of the technology underpinning it after you've been in contact with an application, with a device with the application installed that belongs to a positive person, a person that actually was going to be tested after you met him or her, not before. And obviously, other politicians started to require or release some interviews stating that police will be able to request you to show that you were having the application up and running on your phone, and that would actually limit your behavior if you didn't. All those interviews are still going on today. Regions right now are demanding that they are that they want to release and develop other kind of applications, other kind of tools, and other politicians saying that they are not satisfied with the application developed. So the saga goes on. Those are just few examples. But a few days later, again, we got a documentation released, the first sign of the open source process actually coming to life. And Bending Spoons released a documentation, not the source code, but some text informations, text documents, highlighting how the application for iOS and Android would work, which APIs to exchange information with the backend would have been used, and detailing which components, in third-party components, would have been used. That's great, but that's not enough. you need to understand if people developing open source code are just willing to drop the code and don't accept contribution from other people. And so developers and analysts can actually have a look at the code, but also contribute their improvements, their suggestions, their changes. And I tried, and actually they approved a minor change on the documentation. So another very good sign. A few days later, they announced that the source code would become available later that week. And in the meantime, Apple and Google released the updated versions of their operating systems to the public. So from that moment on, our devices would be able to actually install the application if it has been released on the stores. A few days later, the application actually was, the source code of application was published, and I decided to try it. Obviously, the service is not active because I wasn't entitled. As I said earlier, I wasn't representing the government. It was just my computer. I didn't have the signing keys available, so the application wasn't working, but all the interface, all the features, all the source code was available. And people like myself, but many other people, started to analyzing and reading and trying to find bugs and everything that could be potentially a liability or a risk. Uh, the, the the outcome was very positive. People started to try. I even found a small bug, but there were some, not a lot, but some, and they've been fixed. Contributions have been accepted. On the other side, France released their source code for their application, and what they did, well, if you are a developer familiar with GitHub, or in this case GitLab, they decide, and this can be probably horrible to you, but they decided that the source code would have been released as a zip archive on the Git repository itself. So a clear message: we don't want your contributions, and even we don't have any idea how a Git repository actually works. What we were watching and trying, made by Italy and Bending Spoons for as a company, was clearly a lot different. What was going on in our nearby country. Uh, really great implementations, really great applications, and also the backend sounded really good when they released it a few days later. On June the 1st, the applications were available on iOS and Android Play App and Play stores, and you could actually download it and try it for yourself. Many guides has been written. I'm not going to tell you how Immuni works, because if you are watching a Speck&Tech event, I hope that at least you are able to press next on the tutorial, allow some check some authorizations, and let the application work alone for the following weeks and months. Obviously, there has been some issues with the marketing or communication that I'm sure that needs to improve, and it probably needs to improve based on the government indications. This was a misstep, clearly, but we don't need to talk only about little missteps that has been solved quickly, because actually the application itself, as I previously said, is good. And you can compare it with other implementations. For example, Qatar's COVID-19 contact tracing application had a security breach a few days earlier, and names, surnames, national identifier numbers, the health status, even location data of the population was actually being available to everybody with some technical knowledge. And Qatar, specifically, the government stated that the application was compulsory. So millions of Qatar people installed the application. Otherwise, they have to pay more than $500,000 fines if they were found out that they weren't using it. So not having data is a great opportunity to avoid risks like this. If you are going, and this doesn't apply only to personal information and health information, when you are going to develop your next application or next service, keep in mind that the safest ways to store anything, data of any kind, is to not having it in the first time. So this is not only a single issue, obviously, also the Belgian, the Dutch application has been exposed with a security breach, and we can go on probably. So keep in mind, those applications weren't sounding as they seem. Actually, the process has been more opaque. They haven't been submitted to the public. They weren't open source, and so on. In my opinion, we are more covered than those other countries. You cannot obviously be sure, but given the few data that has been collected and is collected by Immuni and their backends, we are pretty safe. France released their implementation. You can download also their implementation, and you can find out actually that you need to have Bluetooth enabled to actually work, and it doesn't work reliably in background because it doesn't use Apple's and Google frameworks. So in the following weeks and months, we can compare a centralized approach and a decentralized approach with a similar open source implementation, both of them with similar countries, with similar population, with similar possible contagious autumns, and we will find out. We hope to find out, because are those kind of application working? We don't really know. We still don't know. There are many articles. I'm just scrolling through them. We don't know, and but we do know just one thing. If we install the Immuni application, we give it and give ourselves the chance to actually work. If we decide not to install it, not to reach a critical mass, then it surely won't work. So my invite to all of you listening is to download the application if you didn't do it already, install it, configure it. You just need an iPhone 6s or later, or an Android 6 device with Google services. Those it can be that you don't have a device with those informations and those operating system and those Android versions. You can check if you can upgrade. There are still devices that are more than 5-year-old around, so maybe you cannot install it without upgrading your phone. Obviously, that's up to you. I'm not suggesting you to spend money just to install an application, but the biggest part of the population actually is covered and well covered by those requirements. I have a last link to show you. This article in Internazionale is a few days ago, it has been published a few days ago, highlights that we probably have to stop criticizing the Immuni application. I was one of the most vocal critics in April, probably, because I was wondering how actually it could work. Well, I hope that with this small journey, I was able to tell you that the process has been opaque for in the first time, but very open and clear in the last part. And the important part are what we have now. We have a great applications that are that don't have known issues. They are not perfect, obviously, but they are open source. If a bug is found, we can together try to fix. There has been already 3 updates. As you probably know, the experimentation starts today in 4 Italian regions, and in a week or so, it will be expanded to the whole country. I hope you install the application, and thanks for your time. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer them.
We would applaud you. Very great talk, Matteo. I guess you get the thanks from everyone here in the call. Super interesting. It was very pleasant, very interesting to listen to you for, I guess, almost 50 minutes, telling all the whole story, how it evolved. So thanks a lot again. And it's also very positive to see that the people that were most critical again, and also criticizing the whole setup of the application are now the most those pushing it. So it's a very, very good sign. And now we hand it over to the questions from the participants in the call. And I will start with the most upvoted one, which is how would you explain to a non-technical person like parents why they should install Immuni and that it's not a complotto without having a 50-minute talk and telling the whole journey?
I solved that
Well, that's
with
a
my
good
parents just
question.
installing it forcefully. I just grabbed the phones and I forcefully installed it. But I believe it's not the best option that you can you can decide to use.
Well, you can try to find out that if you have a technical sounding person around you. Usually, that's the good the person like most of us obviously are trying to help our parents and older people, but also non-technical people we are helping them in any issue, not just this one. Well, jokes aside, the issue is that the application is well written, is secure, and is privacy preserving as it can. Obviously, if I learn few today or in the last days that the head of a party decided that he wouldn't install the application unless he was super sure that his information weren't spread around. Well, the only thing that we and you can do is just watch the source code and understand the informations. If you are not a technical savvy person, you cannot understand what's going on. But you can trust people that actually look at the code, and if the information are for multiple sources are sounding, then there's not a complotto, like you said, and and you can be pretty safe. Also, you can be a little bit scared. I understand that there are people that are scared of new things, and naming something contact tracing is scary. And there are different implementations around the world. France is an example that are using different approaches, and even the process. And you can find videos from 2 months ago, 1 month ago, from the very same people that are now suggesting you to install the application, that the application could be insecure. So I understand that's not easy, but that's what we have. This talk actually is one of the the option that I had to try to convince you and possibly other people to install the application, even if I tweeted a lot that this wasn't a sounding development process initially.
We should need more influencers like you. Giulio, second question.
And I'm not an influencer, and I'm happy to
Let's
to
say
know that.
that you're a highly local influencer for Speck&Tech community. All right. Going to the second most voted question. It's saying it has more than 1 million downloads. Actually, I've read today on Twitter that it should have a couple of millions, but anyhow. So they're asking how many people should install it percentage-wise to be effective. How can we achieve this given software requirements plus conspiracy wave that has taken place? Um, well, I would like to briefly answer a little bit of this question because I tweeted a wrong thing on the internet today, which is the how many people should install that, and I read wrongfully at the beginning of the development that if we didn't have more than 60% of the people covered, then the app was basically non-useful, which turned out to be, I'm not even saying false, it's just turned to be out as a speculation. As Matteo said before, you can't know until you give it a shot. So at the moment, the more the merrier. At least this is what I read on the latest news. But maybe Matteo has fresher news than mine.
Yes, there has been a clarification in the last few days or even hours, and I can actually share you the new reference to the study. So I'm gonna grab again for a moment the share handle, and this is the updated informations. So yes, to have a comparable coverage of the population comparable with a complete lockdown, you should probably have a 60% penetration and installation of the application. And it's the purple curve up there. But as you can understand, and those are daily new cases measured in hundreds of thousands, so it's numbers really high. Even with sorry, I misread. The 60% is the yellow curve. Obviously, the low curve is the one with more protection. But even if you have less percentage of penetration, you can still be somewhat protected. This is a clarification from the initial study that was published in February, I think, or early March. And the other thing is that I don't have links, but I saw another talk today, and the professor member of the task force said that current data for Italy is saying that for the whole population, smartphones are available on 70% of the population in Italy, including childs. So that's not bad. And if you consider obviously, that there are part of people that won't install it anyway because they have issues even with the 3G and whatever, and or 5G and whatever. And people that are actually young, people that don't have any smartphone, it could be hard to reach 60% of installed base, but we have to try. And I hope we have time before a second wave. Still, we don't know if the application would work. We hope that the second wave would happen in autumn, not before. And with the rate of those of the last week, actually we have the opportunity to cover most of the population, the Italian population. But we have to try. Every one of us need to do their part to ask and spread information and try to convince people that the application needs to be installed, at least to give it a chance.
For those who are interested in the article that Matteo was sharing some minutes ago, I just linked in the YouTube chat.
Awesome. And also we will share the slides from Matteo's talk later on. Another question. Why is the application referred to as Improva in only 5 regions? And connected to this, how is the region thing working if it's without GPS?
The region thing, just to start with the easier part. When you install the application, you are asked where do you live, and they propose the region list and then the province list. So it's based on that, and not actual location information. And you can even change.
I guess Matteo, I guess the question here is also why it is needed and what is the point also in having that.
Yes, because for the when you test positive, your keys are uploaded to the central database and then propagated to every other device. Every other device that has this application installed, and maybe we can discuss later with the compatibility with other applications and other countries. But for the sake of the question and the discussion, your telephone, your device compares what they just downloaded, the list of the identifiers that have been tested positive, with the ones that the device itself sensed and collected during the previous days. When this happens, the device itself shows you a notification, a local notification, so the central authority doesn't know that actually you could have been exposed. At that time, you have another chance to actually decide to upload or not your informations and declare that you tested positive. Well, if you do that, your informations go to your regional health authority, so they know that you need to be tested for a tampon and so on. And your local doctor can actually help you with the process. If the informations are not reconciled when you test actually positive, you are not able to upload your keys, your exposition keys. There is your temporary identifiers. There's a code that you need to provide to your region, your health authority, and in Italy they are regional. And without that, you are not able to participate, upload your keys, and continue the process. So right now, only 4 regions, starting from today, have been allowed to collect those code and insert the information back into the system. So that's why only for regions. We have many different information technology systems in the regions. There needs to be some integration, and obviously also the hardest part is what each region is going to do to you when you receive a notification stating that you are positive. Probably the oppositions from many regions right now, at least vocal opposition, is caused by the fact that they fear that they need to do many more tests to the people that could be notified as potentially positive. We don't really know what's going to happen. There could be also a balkanization. Regions can behave differently. That's an open point, and that's when that's how that's why we don't know if the application will actually help or not, because technologically it seems to be well done, but we don't know if when people are going to be notified, they are going to report the issue to their doctor. They are wanting to be put in quarantine. We don't know. So there's that.
Yeah, I believe from the technological standpoint, it has been done in the probably best way that it could have been done. All the outside that you mentioned, it's probably outside the scope of the app. So, as you say, regions and people behavior, you can change that with technology. So, that's actually the hard part. All right. So
A
let's.
few more questions before we close.
Yeah. So we have the last question. They're saying, are you aware of any ideas to implement cross communication between contact tracing apps of different states, like the European Union, for example?
This is a twofold question, because when Apple and Google announced their frameworks in April, they said that this was the first approach they were willing to tackle to the problem, and there will be a second phase for them with a more first-party approach that would actually work globally. Uh, we didn't hear from them anything else, so maybe this plan is completely scratched, but there could be something later this year. The other thing is that applications that are using Apple's and Google's implementation, but actually applications, so the Italian application, the German application, and other European and possibly other countries all around the world applications using the very same framework from Apple and Google could actually work using a backend sharing of the positive keys. So if Italy relays the positive keys collected during the last days and sends them to Germany, and Germany sends the keys to Italy, actually we could be notified that we've been exposed just because a German person was passing by, and the identifiers are completely interoperable. With other kind of applications like the France application and other implementations all around the world that don't use the Apple and Google frameworks, well, the protocol can be very different from the one, and the key format, the identifiers format exchanged via Bluetooth could be completely not understandable by the telephones themselves, so they wouldn't watch for the specific radio signals emitted from different telephone and different applications. So probably we will be able to visit Germany without the needs, or Swiss for Switzerland has already published and then removed because they are still testing it, but they published another application using Google and Apple APIs. Probably we can visit Switzerland without the needs to install their application, also because there is the communication with our doctor, our health officials that needs to be done with our own country, but we need to install the France application if we go to France and vice versa.
Right. So this was the last question. Thank you very much, Matteo. The talk has been wonderful. Also, we really enjoyed the use of tweets of people of the community. That was very fun to see all the things unfolding with like actual real people that we know instead of, say, prime ministers and so on. Even if we had some ministers saying funny stuff, they are very good with humor. Um, so thank you for being our guest for another time. We are really looking forward for the next one, and thanks to everyone who meet virtually in this conversation and on YouTube. We've been a good amount of people in YouTube, more or less 60 people during all the talk, which, considering the amount of stream and digital fatigue that we have because there is a lot of stuff online, it's a very good number. And yeah,
we say goodbye to our friends on YouTube.
Yeah,
and
thanks to everyone who was following on YouTube. We are closing the
enjoy your
stream
night.
right now, and we have some table games and so on going on Slack. You can find the link on the usual places, our website, and we are going to put a link on our YouTube channel. Thanks everyone, and have a good
Ciao.
night.
Bye bye.